I find myself in a predicament, entangled in a web of familial expectations and financial disputes within my marriage. The notion of inheriting my rightful share seems to be slipping away, overshadowed by the relentless pursuit of wealth by my husband and mother-in-law. In the realm of matrimony, one would assume that an inheritance is a natural entitlement. Yet in my case, it appears to be an elusive right, as both my husband and mother-in-law exhibit an unwavering fixation on money. Their covetous tendencies extend beyond mere possession, venturing into the audacious territory of claiming my late father's hard-earned legacy as their own. The audacity of surrendering my father's amassed wealth to these individuals is inconceivable. Unforgivable, in fact. My resolve strengthens with each passing day, and I am determined not to succumb to their voracious desires. Allow me to introduce myself. A 44-year-old navigating the complexities of a 20-year-old marriage. Amidst the delicate balancing act of household responsibilities and a demanding job, my husband John, aged 46, toils away at a supermarket near the station. Our paths crossed during my university years, a chance encounter at the very supermarket where I held a part-time job. Casual dating evolved into marriage at the age of 24, and our union now includes our son, Bill, who recently embarked on his journey into university life this spring. The fabric of my life is woven with fulfilling responsibilities, but a disquieting undercurrent persists: my husband's reckless spending habits. While the right to spend our hard-earned money is undeniable, his unrelenting demands for additional funds, accompanied by a lack of transparency, only serve to exacerbate the situation. In the presence of my husband and his parents, financial matters become a battleground. My resistance to their insatiable demands is met with vehement opposition, and the atmosphere becomes charged with tension. My son, Bill, thankfully, shares my sentiments towards his grandparents and ensures his absence whenever they make an appearance. However, a startling revelation from Bill unveils a new layer of turmoil. The revelation of my husband's infidelity, witnessed firsthand by our son, leaves me more disheartened than angry. Bill, advocating for a divorce, echoes my sentiments. Though reassured by my son's support, I decide to confront my husband before taking any drastic steps. As I prepare to address the issue, an unexpected intrusion occurs. My husband and his parents barge into our living room. Seemingly innocuous, their visit takes a turn when my husband proposes an extravagant trip to Hawaii, accompanied by a demand for a substantial sum of $5,000. Frustration reaches its peak, prompting me to confront them not only about their financial expectations, but also about my husband's infidelity. The room falls silent, and I brace myself for the repercussions of this revelation. Prepared to confront my husband as planned, I confronted him about the allegations of infidelity. His initial response was one of denial and confusion, questioning the need for proof and asserting his innocence. I pointed out that someone had witnessed him entering a hotel with another woman, to which he responded by challenging the credibility of the observer. Frustrated, I hesitated, not wanting my anger to be directed at our son, Bill, who had shared the unsettling revelation. Astonishingly, my mother-in-law dismissed the seriousness of the accusation, suggesting that forgiving a cheat or two is normal for men. I found it incredulous that a woman herself could condone such behavior. However, the urgency shifted to their demand for money for a Hawaii trip, a distraction my husband readily embraced, leaving the matter of his infidelity unresolved. Exasperated with these constant financial disputes and moral insensitivity, I decided that it was time to sever ties. Calmly, I announced that we were getting a divorce. In response, my husband threatened to claim my parents' mansion as part of the property division if the separation proceeded. As tensions escalated during our argument, my cell phone rang, interrupting the heated exchange. It was my uncle, my father's brother, bearing unsettling news. My father had collapsed, lost consciousness, and was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. Urgently summoned to the hospital, I explained the situation to my husband and his parents before departing. Upon arriving at the hospital, I discovered that my father was stable but not in optimal condition. My father, age 67, had dedicated his life to the family business, overcoming initial challenges to provide a comfortable life for us. The news of his sudden health crisis left me emotionally shaken, prompting me to reflect on his irreplaceable role in my life. Days later, my father regained consciousness, alleviating some concerns. Visiting him with Bill, we shared a moment of relief and concern. However, the doctor's subsequent call revealed the severity of my father's condition, exacerbated by years of overwork. In the following days, my father passed away, and grief enveloped me. Throughout this difficult time, Bill remained a steadfast source of support. As an only child, I shouldered the responsibility of funeral preparations, and my husband's indifference only heightened my emotional burden. At the funeral, my in-laws made an appearance, expressing admiration for the family home and insensitive curiosity about its value. In the aftermath of the memorial services, while attempting to come to terms with my father's passing, my in-laws, father-in-law, and mother-in-law made a sudden visit. Their focus, however, remained on the materialistic aspects, with my mother-in-law fixating on the grandeur of the house and my father-in-law probing into its potential value. Their departure, seemingly content with their financial inquiries, left me speechless. As I began to cope with the grieving process and put away funeral clothes at home, a new wave of confusion emerged. My parents were on their way over, and I was left wondering about the purpose of their unexpected visit. My initial apprehension deepened as I awaited the arrival of my parents, anticipating another discussion veering towards financial matters. In a solemn attempt to understand their motives, I resolved to engage in conversation upon their arrival. As they entered, my in-laws wore satisfied grins, taking their places on the sofa. The atmosphere tensed when my husband abruptly suggested we move from our spacious house, proposing that his parents join us in our new abode. Baffled by this sudden proposition, I reiterated my intention to proceed with the divorce, a decision fueled by my commitment to address my late father's affairs. However, my husband, dismissing the notion of infidelity and divorce, casually declared his intent to share everything between spouses. This included the inheritance, a claim he justified as his right as a husband. Their audacious assumption that all the inheritance belonged to them infuriated me, and their whimsical discussions about room preferences in a new mansion only fueled my frustration. Determined to thwart their plans and protect the legacy my father had worked hard to build, I vowed never to let them have their way. The audacity of my husband and his parents, treating my father's house and wealth as if it were rightfully theirs, had pushed my patience beyond its limits. A few days later, a call from my uncle brought a brief respite. His words of comfort and support reassured me that I had done well amidst the challenges. However, the conversation took an unexpected turn when my uncle expressed a pressing need to meet and share crucial information. Intrigued and apprehensive, I agreed to meet him that night. As my uncle disclosed shocking revelations about my husband and in-laws, I found myself grappling with the gravity of the situation. Determined to seek guidance, I confided in my uncle, sharing the preposterous demands and claims made by my husband and in-laws. My uncle, furious at their audacity, assured me that he would handle the situation. Intrigued by my uncle's plan, I eagerly met with him again the following day, this time accompanied by Bill. The plan unfolded, aiming to enlighten Bill about his father and grandparents and prepare him for the challenging road ahead. Braced for the confrontation, I summoned my in-laws to our house, bringing together the 6 of us, my husband, Bill, and the 3 of them. The discussion centered around the prospect of all 6 of us living in my family home. The proposal caught them off guard, and after confirming their seriousness, my mother-in-law enthusiastically endorsed the idea, expressing eagerness to live in what she deemed a dreamlike mansion. The elation, however, was short-lived. Reality struck when my father-in-law reminded us of the cancellation fee for their previously planned trip, insisting on reimbursement. Appalled by their audacious demands, I realized the depth of their selfishness. Unfazed, My mother-in-law reassured us that they would recoup the money soon enough, dismissing the urgency of the situation. Accustomed to my husband and in-law's relentless pursuit of money, I had grown somewhat immune to their schemes. However, Bill, unaccustomed to their blatant money-grabbing tendencies, appeared visibly upset and angered by their audacity. In an attempt to soothe him, I gently patted Bill's shoulder, assuring him that we would handle the situation. As the conversation revolved around the proposed move into my family home, I decided to play along, knowing well that their assumptions were far from reality. John, my husband, questioned the logistics of the move, displaying an unusual sharpness in his tone. Attempting to deflect the tension, I explained that Bill and I would go ahead to prepare the house, emphasizing that it was a considerable task requiring early action. However, John's skepticism lingered, and he questioned Bill's ability to handle household tasks, especially since he was still a student. I managed to navigate the conversation by suggesting that Bill could manage his responsibilities, though John continued to resist over trivial matters. Despite his resistance, my mother-in-law remained in good spirits, seemingly oblivious to the underlying tension. The conversation inadvertently shifted towards the size of the mansion and the number of rooms, with my mother-in-law expressing excitement. Seizing the opportunity, I assured them that they could choose their rooms first and even proposed a gradual process of tidying up, considering my work schedule. My calculated responses allowed me to temporarily deflect their expectations, leaving them satisfied with their perceived victory. In my mind, I harbored a plan to undermine their assumptions and bring them down from their lofty expectations. The moving day was set a month later, and I eagerly anticipated the final showdown. On the decisive day, my husband and in-laws arrived with a moving truck, expecting to take possession of what they believed to be their new home. Bill and I awaited them in front of the entrance. Ignoring my husband's attempt at humor, I observed the sparkles of excitement in my in-laws' eyes. Little did they know that the impending revelation would shatter their illusions. As my husband made light of the situation, the gate opened, and my uncle, my father's brother, emerged from the house. Silent and imposing, my uncle confronted them, leaving my husband and in-laws puzzled. It became evident that my husband barely remembered my uncle from the funeral. Setting the record straight, my uncle asserted his ownership of the house and clarified the inheritance distribution. The shock on my husband and in-laws' faces grew as they realized the gravity of their misconceptions. Despite my uncle's assertive explanation, my husband remained calm, seemingly attempting to move past the confrontation. In a sudden turn of events, Bill intervened, accusing his father of infidelity. The revelation left my husband shocked and exposed, unable to hide from the truth his son had uncovered. Observing my father entering a hotel with another woman confirmed my suspicions of his infidelity. However, when confronted, he adamantly denied the accusations, refusing to admit to his transgressions. In response, Bill, my son, urged his father to leave our lives, emphasizing the impact of his actions on our family. Despite this plea, my in-laws remained fixated on financial gains, insisting on a proper property division if a divorce were to proceed. My in-laws boldly declared that they had relinquished their apartment and quit their jobs to partake in a life of leisure in the assumed family mansion. Their presumptuous demands left me astounded, especially when they revealed that both my husband and father-in-law had quit their jobs. I questioned their rationale, bewildered by their abrupt decisions and the apparent reliance on my father's inheritance. In response to their audacious claims, I asserted my rightful inheritance as my father's child, anticipating a substantial property division. To my relief, my uncle, a lawyer, intervened to handle the legal proceedings. He exposed my husband's infidelity, supported by evidence gathered during a month-long investigation. The revelation left my husband and in-laws stunned, and they finally began to comprehend the severity of the situation. With my uncle's guidance, I firmly informed them to handle all matters through legal channels and requested they never show their faces to me again. Despite a momentary glare from my husband, they left, and I expressed my gratitude to my uncle for his invaluable support. Following the legal proceedings, Bill and I moved into the family home, fulfilling my father's and grandfather's wishes. Grateful for the opportunity to live in a house filled with memories, I thanked my uncle for the life-changing experience. Bill, having learned from his uncle's guidance, dedicated himself to his studies, aspiring to become a successful lawyer. My ex-husband and his parents found themselves in a challenging situation, residing in an old apartment and struggling to secure new employment. The consequences of their actions began to unravel as my ex-husband reached out for financial assistance. However, having severed all ties, I refused to lend him money, enforcing the newfound estrangement. In the aftermath, my ex-husband's life took an unexpected turn. He resorted to part-time and day jobs, attempting to navigate the consequences of his choices. Their elaborate plan to borrow money for a non-existent luxury trip further exposed the depths of their deception. Grateful for the weight lifted off my shoulders, I focused on my career, with the immediate goal of witnessing Bill successfully graduate from college.